My question has to do with a textual variant. Last year, I wrote my own personal commentary on Ephesians, where I went through every variant as I went along. Like, I found 1:1 to be interesting. 3:14 was pretty explainable, but Ephesians 5:30 gave me such a headache because I feel like it's more of a homotelioton with how verse 30 ends with
autou,
soma autou, and then also ostion autou. And that was the way I think Peter Gurry from Evangelical Textual Criticism explained it. But
I think
Daniel
Peter,
Wallace.
I think Peter would rather be described as being from Phoenix Seminary, but that's okay.
Oh, roger that, sir. Well, Daniel Wallace in the Net Bible said that, and I'm just paraphrasing here because I don't have it in front of me, but it was a scribe solved Genesis 2:24. Quoted in the previous or the following verse in verse 31, and so it was a way of expanding upon the Old Testament usage. But I just wanted to engage your thoughts on what conclusions you came to, because at the end of the day, I do want to know what Paul wrote and not just what I think he wrote.
Right.
I just wanted your thoughts on that, sir.
Well. For those who are interested in textual criticism, the variant in most translations today, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ also does the church, because we are members of his body, period, verse 30 being fairly short, verse 31, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother, shall be joined to his wife, two shall become one flesh. So you have the quotation from Genesis 2 from the Greek Septuagint, beginning at the beginning of verse 31. And then this mystery is great, but I'm speaking with reference to Christ and the church. However, there is what is known as a variant in a number of manuscripts. You have, because we are members of his body, and then ekte sarkos, of his flesh and of his bone, is the majority of the manuscripts that contain this, which is the majority reading, by the way. The majority of Greek manuscripts, most of which would come after 1000 AD, contain this citation that is, as was noted, derived from Genesis 2:23 in the Greek Septuagint. Codex K, which it's interesting as I'm looking at this here, it's cited twice. I'm not sure if that means that it just simply includes that extra addition. I think it does. It has a what looks to me like an obvious repetition in its citation, but it is a majority reading. It's not overly early. It's the second hand of Sinaiticus, but
an interesting note on that is. It's in the margins, and there's an arrow point.
Hello? Oh, lost you there. Are you still there?
Yes, I was saying that in Codex Sinaiticus, there's an arrow pointing at where it would have gone.
Well, yeah, but the second hand, are we having problems, Rich? Because the thing just flashed up there. What's wrong? We're having internet issues. Okay, well, hopefully we're still getting it recorded. That's the important part. The problem is that the second hand of Sinaiticus, at least Sinaiticus 2, superscript 2, is from around the 7th century. So that's a fair ways down the road from. So you're talking, 3.5 centuries after the original writing. But anyway, it is possible, given that autou ends both the shorter phrase and longer phrase, it is possible that the earlier manuscripts like P46, the original Sinaiticus, Alexandrinus, Vaticanus, a number of basically not only uncials but early minuscules and two really important early minuscules, 1739, 1881. Those are both manuscripts we know are taken from very early exemplars. It's possible that there was a line that lost that variant because of homotelioton, I suppose. But that's actually when you look at it, that's a fairly wide ranging number of witnesses. 1739 has that missing in the text, but it's been inserted later into the margin, which means that the someone who worked on that manuscript knew that was had become the majority reading over time. So yeah, I would tend, just as a general rule, when you have a Septuagint citation like this, to recognize that tends to involve addition over time rather than something being deleted. So I would probably go with the editors who have placed that in the footnote. I don't know that it massively changes the meaning, other than maybe trying to connect it a little bit more closely to the Genesis 2 thing. But
well, that was what I came to also, like, because the order is mixed up, if you notice, because I think Adam says bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, and then this says of his flesh and of his bone, so the order is reversed. But you're right, it's still the fact that it says that for we are members of his body, that unity with Christ is not lost if that's not an original reading.
Well, it's certainly not lost. No, not by any stretch of the imagination. It really
but
does.
Do you think that if that wasn't the original, do you think that I was trying to think up ways that became fuller, where he wanted to expand upon the body of Christ, and just also like with Genesis 2:24 being quoted in the following verse, and then I just couldn't really think of, because Daniel Wallace in the Net Bible just talks about the expansion of the quotation, but
yeah, well, obviously, scribes would have had access to the Greek Septuagint. They would have. This would have been a well enough known citation that they could have looked it up. That could add to the possibility of expansion. I can't see how looking it up would in any way lead to not having it expanded. But it's an interesting variant. I don't know that it changes the meaning. It just gives you a slightly thinner New Testament if you don't have it. But I don't think that obviously I wouldn't, because of the variant, I wouldn't put a huge amount of weight if you included the phraseology on differentiating between flesh and bone or something like that. And in this particular context, but it is interesting to note, and I didn't take the time to look what kind of textual notes are provided by ESV or NASB or anybody else as to whether they note that or do or do not. But I'm sure the NET does, that's for sure. The NET notes all that kind of stuff. So, but we've pretty much bored everybody to tears now, Nathan, so we're going to have to...
Yeah, I hope you have a great Thanksgiving, sir. Thank you for taking my call.
All right, thanks, Nathan. God bless. Bye-bye.